to the RunRX podcast, where we talk about all things running. As many runners know, it's 90% mental. So join Coach Valerie and Coach Caroline as we go through the mental side of running. Okay, so we're back. So in this episode, we're going to talk about a certain, I get a lot of magazines, running magazines, and this one really appealed to me because it falls right in line with what you teach, Valerie. And it was forget sit-ups, try these standing ab exercises. And I wanted to talk to you about the core and how important your ab strength, and calling it your ab, but your entire core, your shoulders, your hips, and how important that is to the RunRX method and to pose.
Absolutely. And here's what's so great also about what we do with RunRX is we try to make, no, we don't try, we do. All of our hip exercises, all of our strength exercises are specifically geared for that, to help you hold the line. When we're standing up and we're running, holding our ears over our shoulders, over our hips is the hard part of running. That is hard. It's hard when you're standing. It's hard when you're sitting. People are constantly trying to correct their position, whether it's sitting or standing. So we're doing it for running, but this is the best part. We help you with the running. It totally corrects your sitting and your standing.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's one of those things that I used to, without realizing it, talk about when I would run with friends, and we would be on the longer runs and they'd be feeling all tired and defeated and they'd start hunching over. And I'd tell them, lift up your head. Let's find a point out on the horizon and let's get our shoulders back, because you're hunching over, you're restricting your airflow. In this case, I didn't know what I didn't know, but I didn't realize I knew they were restricting their airflow, but I knew they were also, because their body was so hunched over and constricted, they were also mentally defeating themselves.
Absolutely. Yes. All of those signals to your body, to your brain and your body, it's signals of defeat. And here's the challenge, guys. If I'm out running with you and I'm already tired and you're really trying, those are great cues, by the way. So you're telling me, look ahead and hold your shoulders up. And by the way, the person's thinking, I can't, by that point. And so what's so incredible with strength work is you do that when you're not running, so that when you are running, you can just hold that. That's where I tell people, it's not about specific strength training to make you bulky. It's about specific strength training, just like you said, for that center of your body, from the shoulder, from the ear to the hip, to hold that line as you're running.
Right. Well, it was really interesting too, because you made this comment in our Zoom call in the membership yesterday, and I had this huge aha moment where you said, it's not about flexibility, it's about mobility. And there is a huge difference, guys. If I can be flexible all day long, I can, I could be super awesome and be able to stretch. But if I'm not mobile, if my joints aren't moving properly, then I'm going to get injured. I'm going to bend over and pull something. Right. So, and you were showing some just very simple mobility work, but talk about that for a second, about how, because here we're talking about strength, right? We're talking about holding that core, right? Strength, but and not being tense, but also being nimble and mobile and keeping our shoulders and our hips loose.
Correct. And what's really nice, okay, this is kind of fun. So people will say things like, I have tight hips or I have tight hamstrings. Notoriously, runners are not flexible. I mean, no one's like, oh, you must be a ballerina. No one. To a runner, right? And of course, it's a different sport. We need the elasticity. We need that S-like shape. And that is all about using that rebound and all of that elasticity. Well, part of that, we need a little bit of stability. And the stability comes from the hip and the joints, the hip, the knee, the ankle, being strong and stable, and the joint being able to move through its range of motion. So it would not help me in running to be, like you said, I could do the splits. Would that help me in my run?
Right.
Not so much.
No.
However, However, doing hip opening exercises that allow for full range of motion allow for me that when I'm in the air part of my run, when you're traveling, that's what allows those legs to separate, is having range of motion in the hip, not flexibility so much, but and it's a byproduct, but range of motion allows my legs to separate in the air, and then the elasticity allows them to come back together on the ground. That's why those exercises you do should correlate to wanting to be able to do that in your movement.
Right. And then the other thing that I noticed when we talk about the core and we talk about, keeping our shoulders over our hips, what will happen so much if we don't have that core strength is we'll kind of, without realizing it, we stick our butts out. And I noticed this when I walk my dogs, right? I think we were talking about this last week, that we just walk a little 2-mile, spin around our neighborhood, right? And if I can start to feel it in my lower back, that it's hurting for some reason. And so all I have to do is do what you call it the zipping up your pants. I just kind of, and I don't squeeze my glutes. I just tuck I realize that my hips are pushing out and they're behind they're probably so I'm doing some sort of arching of my back without realizing it. And so all I have to do is just bring my hips in line with my shoulders and concentrate on just kind of holding that as I walk. And it's amazing how much better. And then, of course, looking up and not looking down, right? Trying to look. and just in my walking, I can feel the change within my body and within how it feels.
Right. And that's exactly it. It's awareness. So then that's, by the way, you said two things that were really great, because guys, in RunRX, we do walking as well. So we actually show you how to also use gravity in your hamstrings to walk. And what's fun is if I'm doing that when I'm walking, and like you said, okay, I felt my lower back. What did you adjust? You adjusted your pose. The second you're hurting, something's wrong in not just your movement, but how you're holding yourself. So the challenge then is, okay, how do I correct that? First, I have to know first there is an error, right? So if I'm always that's a great thing. And I don't know if it goes with this, sorry, but if you can correct yourself as you're moving, think about the benefits of that, right? Who's ever been on a run and oh my gosh, my hip or my knee or my something. And if you have an immediate way to go, okay, let me adjust my pose. Let me see if bringing my hips slightly forward corrects this. I mean, there's a lot of really great things to just adjusting little things like that.
Well, in that same conversation, I will say that also I'll notice if I can hear, and we've talked about this too, when we've gone out, when we've been with people and they've been running, if I can hear my foot scuffle, if I'm hearing, that means I'm not pulling, guys. Right. If I can,
or if I'm either slap.
Yeah, a slap. I was going to slapping means I'm landing, right? I'm not pulling. And if I'm scuffling, it means I'm not lifting. I'm not lifting up. And all I have to do is, like you said, break the contact with the ground. I don't have to pull all the way up my knee, my ankle to my knee. It's just a matter of how do I tread lighter is what I try to think when I'm walking and I'm hearing that scuffling. I lift my head up, I tuck my hips underneath, and I think, how do I make it sound effortless?
Be nice to the ground and it will be nice to you. I mean, honestly,
that's a perfect ending. We're going to leave it at that. Be nice to the ground and it will be nice to you. Okay, guys, join us next week because we can already tell we're going to have a great conversation on perception. So talk to you next week. Thank you for joining us on the RunRX podcast. If you'd like to know more, join us at www.runrx.fit. And if you have additional questions that you'd like answered on the podcast, email us at support@runrx.fit.